This right next to me is the updated 2025 Isuzu D-Max, and it's received new styling, new tech, which means Isuzu have addressed some of the flaws with the pre-updated version, but as the dual cab ute segment is getting very competitive, is the D-Max still a good alternative to consider? So in this full detailed review, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the D-Max, and if you haven't already, please like this video, hit subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications every time I upload a new car review. But for now, let's get straight into the video. Let's start the video talking about a brief overview about the D-Max. So the whole range starts off at $32,000 for the 4x2 models, climbing up to $54,000. And moving up from there are the 4x4 models, which are priced between $42,000, climbing up to $70,000. And of course, you've got a wide choice of single cab, dual cab, chassis and pickup, various body styles to pick from, depending on the model grade you choose, along with 2 engine choices and 2 transmission options, again, depending on the model variant you go for. And if we move on to key rivals specific to the X-Terrain, this is the type of dual cab ute that competes with the Toyota Hilux Rogue. And the second option is the Ford Ranger Wildtrak, which is currently the top selling dual cab ute in the segment. And thirdly, the new Mitsubishi Triton, which I have also reviewed. And finally, I would like to thank Harrigan Motor Group Moscow for allowing me to film their D-Max that is currently on display. And if you'd like to get in contact with them, I'll put a link in the description below. Right, let's now move on to the design. So the colour of this car is finished off in Mercury Silver Metallic, and if you don't like that colour, there are 9 other external colours to pick from. Now, in terms of the visual changes the D-Max has received, this is what the pre-update used to look like, and of course this is the current one. So you have revised full LED headlights, and the indicators are also integrated within the headlight cluster, and additionally there's LED DRLs, and down the bottom LED fog lights. And this of course being the X-Terrain, you get a darker front radiator grille as well as dark accents down the bottom, and finally underneath some underbody protection. And now moving towards the side view of the facelifted D-Max. So this X-Terrain version sits on 18-inch alloy wheels that are finished off in dark grey and wrapped around in highway terrain tyres, and in addition to that you also get dark grey wheel arch cladding as well as dark grey wing mirrors, door handles and roof rails up the top. And if we look lower down, aluminium side steps, however they are plastic on the edges, so you might want to change them if you're thinking about going off-road. And it is also worth noting that you don't get privacy glass on the third quarter, which might not matter to you, but it is worth pointing out. And finally, up the front, a disc brake setup, whereas towards the back, a rear drum brake setup. And now moving towards the rear design of the updated D-Max. So this is the pre-facelift on your screen now, and this is the current one. So as you can see, the rear tail lights have been slightly revised. However, it is worth noting that they are still partial LEDs, so you still get incandescent globes for the indicators and reversing lights. And of course, this being the X-Terrain, you have a sail plane up the top here, finished off in dark grey, as well as a roller shutter, which is manually operated. Additional cladding down the bottom, a 4x4 sticker, rear mud flaps, and looking lower down, a plastic rear step-up bar, and looking even lower down, a towing kit, as the D-Max does have a towing capacity of 3.5 tonnes and an unbrake towing capacity figure of 750 kilograms. And finally, underneath the tray, a full-size spare tyre. Okay, moving on to the interior inside the D-Max. So before you climb inside, this features a remote key with remote start, as well as keyless entry and push-button start for the ignition. Now, in terms of the overall layout, nothing has changed in comparison to the pre-facelift. However, they have updated this infotainment and also given it some new dials, and there is also a new display in the center as well. And it definitely feels a little bit more premium in comparison to a Hilux. And in terms of quality, up the top here, it's relatively soft. You've got an interesting design pattern on the side there, as well as this nice textured material on the doors, which is nice and soft. There is also a leather wrapped steering wheel that feels very nice to grip onto. It does get a bit hard up the top here, and even when you look on the lower sections, which is pretty typical for a dual cab ute, but you do get a soft to the touch armrest. And if we move on to comfort, the steering offers both manual tilt and reach adjustment, and these seats are relatively soft too, much better in comparison to the Hilux. And the driver's seat offers electric adjustment with lumbar support, however manual adjustment for the passenger side, but both the front row seats can be heated. There is also dual zone climate control, and in terms of tech, it all runs off this 9-inch touchscreen, which has been heavily revised in terms of the infotainment. And there are also touch sensitive buttons below, physical knobs, and some physical buttons on the steering wheel. And if I go into media, we've got AM, FM and DAB digital radio, as well as USB, Bluetooth audio, and this is all paired to an 8-speaker sound system, and as well as wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This is what the Apple CarPlay looks like, and as you can see, you can integrate Siri, and that works very well within the system. There is also inbuilt voice control and inbuilt satellite navigation with 3D mapping. And moving on to safety and assistance, this features a reversing camera with parking guidelines, and as well as front and rear parking sensors. And in terms of other key safety items, we've got blind spot monitoring on the wing mirrors, as well as autonomous emergency braking up the top here, an auto dimming revision mirror, as well as a lane keeping assistant where this car has the ability to steer itself within its lane, adaptive cruise control, and finally towards the cluster, speed sign recognition. And moving on to off-road modes, we've got a selectable four-wheel drive dial where you can swap it from two-wheel drive high range, four-wheel drive high range, and push down for four-wheel drive low range, and as well as buttons down here for the hill descent control. And this button here switches off the parking sensors, and this button here enables your rear diff lock. And finally, the top one here is your rough road mode, which is an off-road specific traction control. And going into this menu, there is an off-road specific layout that shows you what is going on internally with the car. And moving on towards the center here, we've got a partial analog and digital instrument cluster, which does look a lot more modern. And using the buttons down here, you can cycle through different menus looking at fuel consumption, driver assistance, media functions, navigation, and other key data. And finally, storage. So on either side of the dashboard, you've got these pop-out cup holders, and towards the passenger side, a double glove box setup. So overall, pretty spacious. And looking up the top here, some additional storage, and on the doors, decent door bin storage that could also fit a bottle of water. However, no wireless phone charging down below, but they have added USB-C opposed to USB-A connectivity. Up the top here, we've got a sunglasses holder, and you've also got a 12-volt socket on the side here, two deep cup holders towards the center, and decent center storage in the glove box. Right, let's now move on to the back seat. So what has changed? The D-Max now receives a USB-C port instead of a USB-A, but apart from that, that's pretty much it. So you still get decent knee room and toe room. Headroom is also okay, and you've also got these grab handles on the B-pillars, as well as these grab handles up the top here, shopping bag hook behind the seat, as well as these map pockets. And looking on the doors, decent door bin storage that could fit a bottle of water. And if you look towards the center, a fold down armrest with two small cup holders. And you can also lift this bottom section up, revealing additional capacity, and as well as two storage sections to keep items hidden. And additionally, you could also fold down this section that reveals a flat low bay, and towards the right hand side is the location for the spare jack and toolkit. And finally, for child seats, these two outboard seats are ISOFIX compatible, and right behind me there are two top tether points. And if we now move on to the tub, if I open this up, as you can see, this features a tailgate hydraulic assist, which means the tailgate itself is easy to lift up and down. And in terms of the size, overall, it is pretty spacious, not necessarily the class leader in the segment. That crown goes to the Ford Ranger. There's 980 kilograms of payload, which is more than what you get in the Hilux that has just under 800 kilograms of payload. And of course, this being the X-Terrain, you get a spray and bed liner as standard, as well as a manually operated roller shutter. But just bear in mind, it does impair space at the back, which is pretty typical for most dual cab utes with roller shutters. And in addition to that, you've also got two tie-down points on each side, as well as some drainage holes to let water out if water starts building up the top there. And in terms of other key specifications that you might want to know, all of that information is on your screen now. So with that out of the way, let's now move on to the engine. Let's now move on to the powertrain. So nothing has changed, which means you still get a 3-litre inline 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel engine that produces 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters of torque, and combined with a 6-speed automatic transmission, along with a selectable 4-wheel drive system. And in terms of the ownership, Isuzu offers a 6-year, 150,000 kilometre warranty, and as well as 7 years of roadside assistance. And for servicing, it is every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres for the intervals, and each visit will set you back $449. Okay, moving on to the driving impressions inside the D-Max. So at the front, great vision. There are also decent sized wing mirrors, as well as great vision from the sides and good visibility from the back. There is also a traditional gear selection selector, as well as a manual handbrake, which some might appreciate. And in terms of the way this drives, throttle application is nice and smooth. And in terms of the steering feel, it is a lot more lighter in comparison to a Hilux, but it is still hydraulic, so you still have a good sense of what the front wheels are doing. This also has an 11-meter turning circle radius, so for a dual cab ute, it's okay in terms of maneuvering around tight streets. And in terms of refinement, this is a better drive in comparison to a Hilux. The seats are a lot more softer, the suspension is a lot more forgiving, and the engine doesn't feel as gruff as Hilux's 2.8 litre turbo diesel. I think the only thing annoying is that speed sign recognition. And like the Hilux, there is no full-time forward drive for sealed surfaces like there is in the Ford Ranger. And in terms of power and performance, it isn't the class-leading dual cab ute in the segment in terms of performance figures, but it does a really nice job at accelerating, especially speeds past 80 kilometers going to 110, where you need the power the most for overtaking or getting up to speed. So this does a really nice job at doing that. And in terms of fuel consumption, Isuzu claims that the D-Max with the 3-litre engine should be able to achieve 8 litres per 100. Now in terms of what I've achieved, this car is actually brand new, so there isn't an accurate figure showing, so I can't really tell you what this has achieved, but I have driven D-Maxes in the past with the 3-litre engine, and I achieved around 10 litres per 100 driving around the city with a mixture of freeway driving as well. So overall I think that is pretty good for the category. So how does the new D-Max drive in comparison to the pre-facelift? Well, you still get the same powertrain, same power and torque figures, but they have addressed some of the flaws with the pre-facelifted D-Max, such as the adaptive cruise control. So before it wasn't really that great, but in this new version they have made some adjustments, so that works a lot better. And of course that review camera is a lot more clearer. So with my driving impressions out of the way, let's now wrap up with a verdict. So my final verdict on the updated D-Max. Well, even though the changes are minor, Isuzu have definitely improved the D-Max and addressed some of the flaws with the pre-update, and therefore I still think this is a compelling option amongst other dual cab utes. But let me know what you think of my verdict down in the comment section below. And if you gained value from this video, please give it a like, share, subscribe, and also hit the bell to receive more of my upcoming videos. But for now, I will see you in the next film. Thanks for watching.